Happy Saturday. Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads. Today, I have another video in the deep dive character study, and today we are going to deep dive the character Holly Gibney. For those of you who don't know, Holly Gibney is a fictional character that was created in 2014 when Stephen King released Mr. Mercedes. This is the first installment in what most people call the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, which is really the Bill Hodges trilogy. And so we get our first glimpse at Holly as a character. And Stephen King was so taken by the character and his creation that not only did he carry her throughout the trilogy, but then he spawned some other books and a novella as well from her, and we're going to talk about that. Again, she first appeared in Mr. Mercedes in that trilogy. Then she appeared in the book The Outsider, and then in a novella, If It Bleeds, and then in her own book by her own name of Holly in 2023. And we're going to walk through some of those and what those mean and what they're about here in just a second. But I also wanted to share with you that her character not only has appeared in the books, but has also appeared in two different TV adaptations. There was the Bill Hodges trilogy, the Mr. Mercedes trilogy that was portrayed, Holly was portrayed by Justine Loop. And then there was a TV adaptation on HBO for The Outsider, and Holly's character was portrayed by Cynthia Erivo. And so, who is Holly Gibney? So we start off in the Bill Hodges trilogy and the book Mr. Mercedes. We meet Holly, this introverted, quiet, savant, intelligent computer whiz. Holly suffers from sensory processing disorder as well as obsessive compulsive disorder. So you really get to see kind of all of her tics and through the books, and King does a really, really good job of portraying that. She definitely has the signs of autism, that she's on the spectrum. And so you get to see that throughout her character, and you get to see how she copes with that throughout these entries of her overarching stories as a character, which I think is really cool. She has a very overbearing mother, and you meet her in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, the Bill Hodges trilogy, and in the book Mr. Mercedes, I should say. She seems really kind of like the mother is really sucking the life force out of her and her spirit, and there's a lot of people that really could relate with that, I think, as readers. And so, you know, because everyone's got family dynamics that are very, very, you know, fractured or different. We've all got, you know, that one family member, the really weird uncle or something like that. And so she's very relatable in that sense. So in terms of evolution, you know, again, we'll walk through this. In 2014, Mr. Mercedes was published, and we got to see, you know, this story here. In particular, Holly helps the ex-cop turned kind of private investigator, Bill Hodges, as he kind of goes after Brady Hartsfield. And so you really get your introductory towards Holly, and you get to see her kind of shine, kind of come out of her cocoon, so to speak. And then in 2015, we get the second book in the Bill Hodges trilogy, Finders Keepers, and you get to see Holly, along with Jerome and Bill, kind of help Pete Sabers and his family as they uncover, Pete uncovers these notebooks and this story from this unpublished and slain author, and how Morris Bellamy is going to go after the family because he wants that last Jimmy Gold novel and what it's worth and everything. And so Holly again helps Bill out really, really well. In 2016, you get the final installment in the Bill Hodges trilogy, End of Watch. We get to see, you know, Holly and Bill now partners, and they partnered the private investigative firm Finders Keepers. And so they must deal again with Brady Hartsfield's return from the mental hospital and his coma that he's in, and they have to do that before, you know, he strikes again, so to speak. And then in 2018, you get the novel The Outsider. Holly is a major character in this, as she helps Detective Rolf Anderson try to piece together after a young boy is found and brutally murdered, and everything in the crime, the DNA, fingerprints, everything points to this guy named Terry Maitland. But yet he has this unclad alibi that he wasn't there, and so they're dealing, how is he at two places at once, and they're dealing with some kind of supernatural element. We really get to see Holly and her investigative skills really come to fruition, along with her developing as a personality, her character kind of overcoming some of these tics and quirks and disorders that she has. And then in 2020, we get the novella collection, If It Bleeds. In one of the 4 novellas, the title novella, If It Bleeds, stars Holly acting with her business finders keepers. She sees footage of the school bombing on TV, and one particular reporter, Odonsky, seems completely off. And this, again, turns into the supernatural element that has ties to The Outsider. And then in 2023, we get the culminant installment that is titled Holly. And King writes his first novel that was just dedicated to Holly Gibney as a character, first and foremost. I do not have a copy of that book. That is the only Stephen King book I do not have a physical copy of. I probably won't ever have a copy of it unless I find a used paperback copy whenever those are released in some used store for next to nothing, honestly. In this particular one, and we'll touch on that in a minute, but this particular entry, we get to see Holly. Her mother passes. We're dealing with, actually during and post-COVID pandemic. She's contacted by a mother whose daughter is missing, and she has to, Holly ends up taking the case, and she has to uncover, more than what she wishes. All the while she's dealing with kind of her inheritance and the will and everything of her mother's passing. And so she has to kind of figure out what's going on. Really, the story-wise is really, really good. It's a captivating plot and premise to it. It's just, we'll touch base on why I just don't like that novel. So some kind of the cool and facts I enjoy about Holly, she helps Bill and really starts helping, finders keepers, the investigative business that she co-founds with Bill. I really think she does a great job, and you can tell this quiet, introverted person in the first kind of entry in our first foray with her in the 2014 novel to where she is in Holly in 2023. She definitely has grown as a character quite a lot. And so that's really something that I really, really enjoy. As you know, I'm a sucker for series where we have a character and you get to see over the course of many years dealing with many different conflicts how they evolve. And so definitely I'm a sucker for her as well. There is a discussion I thought was really interesting, is that there is discussion, no ETA, that they're going to look at some kind of adaptation for the book Holly. I won't watch this in any shape or form just because I'm so turned off by the book, but that is out there. In terms of, I will say this, in terms of the book Holly, for me it's a trash book. I never recommend it that you read it. If King would release a amended one where he would take out the stuff about the anti-mask, anti-vax, anti-Trump, all this political crap, it would be a good story. It would be interesting. And again, it has a character that I like a lot. I'm a huge Holly Gibney fan. I think she's a very dynamic. I think she's a very witty, intelligent, because has this captivating arc to her kind of life that we get to see in these installments from King. And so I think she's very, very interesting. Some of the kind of, what makes her interesting, is a good segue, because she has some really cool side characters. Obviously, you have Bill in the Bill Hodges trilogy. He is kind of like this godlike figure, father figure. He gives her purpose. He put her on this kind of, path. He kind of gives her light when her world was darkness and her mother was overpressing, and all this, and she was never able to do anything, and she was always kind of you know, in any types of social circles, her mother was just, oh, well, that's Holly, you know, don't worry about her type thing. And so Bill gives her this light, kind of like this, you know, godlike creature, but it's really kind of a father figure type thing, to where she is able to come out of her own shell and do her own thing. Then you obviously have Jerome. Jerome was, you know, there since, you know, day one with this character as a supporting character, and Jerome's an interesting character in and of itself. And so he, you know, he's this book writing guy he becomes a book writer and author, and he's definitely this cool vibe, kind of the yin to her yang when we first meet him, but they just grow very fond. You know, he has a way of kind of getting her to, you know, open up type thing. And so he's definitely a great side character, you know. And then you have Jerome's sister, Barbara. She plays a huge role in the book Holly, especially with what happens to Holly in that story. Barbara becomes, you know, a huge component, and she's definitely, both her brother and herself are invested in Holly's life. Holly's invested in their life. And so they're kind of they're kind of connected in that sense. In terms of where to start reading, I mean, you really have to start with the Bill Hodges trilogy, in my opinion. I mean, you can read The Outsider, you can read the novella, and If It Bleeds. I think you'd be fine. If you read, do not read Holly, in my opinion. At least don't start there, in my opinion. I read Holly because I needed to read all the books. I won't ever reread it again unless it's again amended. But don't start with Holly as your first entry to Holly Gibney. I suggest reading the Bill Hodges trilogy first. If for whatever reason you have a copy of The Outsider, you have a copy of If It Bleeds, and you want to, you know, get a taste for it, sure. I think it makes more sense starting at the beginning when she's introduced for the first time in Mr. Mercedes. So that's my entry point for her. Overall, again, I think she's a phenomenal character. I think she's very dynamic. I think she's got a really cool story about her. I think she has a huge change in terms of her personality, her abilities, and everything else. And you know, she's definitely this person that was kind of just kept down, and now she's flourishing, she's flowering, that kind of thing. And so she's an interesting character. And so I highly recommend you check them out. Again, I suggest you start with the Bill Hodges trilogy with Mr. Mercedes. I think it's a great entry point. You know, The Outsider and If It Bleeds would be secondary, but Holly is just not, I wouldn't recommend you read that at all. But that's just me. So anyways, this is my deep dive character study of Holly Gibney. She is a fantastic fictional character created by Stephen King. I hope you're having a great evening, and I will talk to you later. Thanks.